Good evening. I'll now call the Standing Committee meeting of June 3rd, 2024 to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of interest at this time? Seeing none, there are no declarations of interest at this time. Next on the agenda, I'm going to call on Chair Thatcher with a message from the chair.
Good evening, everyone. This month is Indigenous History Month. At the Durham District School Board, we understand the importance of acknowledging the rich and complex history of Indigenous peoples, both past and present. We recognize that the lands upon which our schools and communities thrive have been the ancestral territories of Indigenous nations, each with their own unique cultures, languages, and traditions. Our commitment to fostering understanding, respect, and reconciliation is reflected in the work of our Indigenous Education Department. Through dedicated efforts, we strive to implement the calls to action set forth by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, ensuring that Indigenous history, perspectives, and contributions are woven into the fabric of our educational practices. Central to our mission is the empowerment of our students, providing them with opportunities to explore and celebrate their own identities, while cultivating a deep appreciation for the diverse cultures that enrich our shared community. Moreover, we recognize that our responsibility extends beyond the classroom walls, encompassing a commitment to engage with Indigenous communities in meaningful dialogue and collaboration. In adopting our Indigenous education policy, we affirm our belief in the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples to preserve and promote their cultural heritage. We pledge to uphold these rights by ensuring that our educational materials and public information are inclusive, accurate, and respectful of Indigenous perspectives.
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. Now I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Brown, Trustee Linton, all those in favor? It's approved. Thank you. And moving on to the director's update, I'll call on Director Camille Williams-Taylor.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Good evening and welcome. June 1st marked the beginning of Pride Month, a time to demonstrate our commitment to making every person in the 2S LGBTQI community feel welcome, included, safe, and affirmed in their unique perspectives and lived experiences in every DDSB school and workplace. The annual Durham Pride Parade took place yesterday, and there was a great turnout of trustees, staff, students, and families in attendance, helping to confirm the important message to the 2S LGBTQI students that they are seen and that they matter. Last week, 3 DDSB students competed at the Skills Nationals in Quebec City as a part of Team Ontario. Tina Jang and Sunny Huang from Donald A. Wilson for 2D animation, and Marius Sasu from Maxwell Heights in photography. Marius brought home a silver medal for his photography skills. Also last week, Maxwell Heights Secondary School student Omar Elgazar was awarded the prestigious TD Scholarship for Community Leadership. Annually, TD awards the scholarship to 20 graduating students from across Canada who have demonstrated outstanding leadership and contributions to support change and progress that help their communities to thrive. In addition to his academic achievements, Omar has been an active member of the Maxwell Heights Muslim Student Association, and a community leader engaging with local initiatives that support people in Durham who are unhoused and navigating food scarcity. Congratulations to Omar on this outstanding accomplishment. We wish you the very best this fall as you begin the next stage of your education journey studying mechatronics engineering at the University of Waterloo. On May 30th, the Ministry of Education announced plans to introduce new high school graduation requirements and programming changes intended to ensure students are better prepared for life beyond high school. Some of the changes will include a financial literacy graduation requirement, modernized home economics courses, career coaching and revised guidance education, and a student exit survey. The implementation of the changes will be phased in starting in the school year 24-25 and beyond, and more information will be shared with DDSB students, families, and staff as it becomes available. On May 31st, the Ministry of Education announced funding approval for DDSB to proceed to the next phase of construction for 2 new schools. One elementary school in West Ajax that includes a child care center, and one new elementary school in North Oshawa. Combined, these schools represent spaces of over 1,900 students and will provide accommodation pressure relief in Pickering, Ajax, and Oshawa on their anticipated openings in fall of 2025 and fall of 2026, respectively. On May 24th, the annual Durham Region Heritage Fair took place here at the Education Center. This multimedia initiative helps to increase public awareness and interest in Canadian history, and DDSB students had the opportunity to explore aspects of Canadian heritage and present their own projects in a public exhibition. I commend the hard work and the research undertaken by all the students who participated. Coming up on June 20th, the Whitby Station Gallery will host the first annual Durham Alternative Secondary School, that's DAS, art exhibition opening reception. Students have been hard at work creating paintings, drawings, sculptures, photographs, and mixed media, and their works will be on display from June 8th to June 30th at the Whitby Station Gallery. Thank you, and that concludes my update for this evening, Chair.
Thank you. This evening we have one staff presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Director Williams-Taylor and Superintendent Georgette Davis, with Manager of Research and Strategic Analytics, Chris Conley, for the multi-year strategic plan, operational plan.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So we are excited to present this, and I know that Superintendent Dr. Davis and Chris Connolly, Manager Chris Connolly, will take us through. But I do want to open by recognizing that this is the representative work of everyone in this room. Trustees passed phase 1, setting us on a path in the board meeting in January, giving us direction around the commitments that we are expected to undertake as it feeds back and represents the consultations that we undertook. Trustees engaged in multiple working meetings with our consultant and then subsequently with the staff to arrive at that first move. Our move is this second move. So what you see before you today is, in fact, the representation of phase 2 of 3 in the stages to getting boots on the ground, if you will, for the work to happen in classrooms, in offices, and in our buildings and on our sites. So you see here that when we open this up, and I would love to open it all up in front of you, but that will not be good for the mic. But inside you will see that there is in fact a representation of what are the actions that we are prepared to commit to that will help us to deliver on the promises that you have expected us to undertake in the direction that you gave us in January. The third part, which is what you don't see before you, is what will be undertaken in schools, classrooms, and departments as they take the actions that are identified here and create critical paths with metrics and decisions to drive forward on the delivery. Those will be reflected in the feedback that comes back to trustees as we report report on our journey with the strategic plan over the next 4 years. That said, at this point, I want to turn it over to Superintendent Davis and Manager Connolly to take us through the report as well as the document that's before you. So over to you, Dr. D.
Good evening, everyone, and through you, Chair. The report can be found starting on page 1 in your package. Tonight, I have the privilege, the pleasure, and the responsibility to share with you our operational plan for the year 2024-2025 with Chris and representing the senior team. I am really excited about the process that we took to get here, and I'm really excited about the actions that we will take to move forward. So the why behind why we're here, you can see if you open up the first part of the package and you just look on the right-hand side, and it says, who are we? So we are students, staff, family, community, and the multi-year strategic plan is our roadmap that tells us where we need to go because of our why. So in the presentation that we will have today for the next few minutes, we'll go a little bit through this document for you with the different parts of our journey. So we wanted to share with you our why.
We live and learn on Indigenous land.
We live in apartments, hotels, shelters, foster homes, group homes, and houses.
We are artists, scientists, athletes, linguists, and mathematicians.
We are leaders, makers, influencers, and thinkers.
We are all learners and teachers in our own unique ways and roles.
We teach, learn, and work in schools, in the education center, at home, and in communities.
When we work, learn, and lead together, we appreciate each other.
We make space for each other and thrive in community.
We are connected through care, mutual respect, and support.
We represent many ancestries, generations, ethnicities, abilities, ways of living, loving, and worship.
We are newcomers, settlers, or have lived here since time immemorial.
We have individual and shared responsibilities and know that we are all important.
We define individual paths towards greatness while we pursue learning, wellness, growth, and change.
We communicate through many languages, through sign, touch, words, pictures, and in silence.
We make mistakes.
We embrace our potential and take responsibility for who we are becoming.
Being of service to others is central to our identities.
We are all this and more.
We are DDSB!
So we had the opportunity through our multi-year strategic plan journey to get to know who we are as DDSB and to get to know our why. So how we got here was through, in January, we came to you as Director Williams Taylor talked about, and we went through the consultation phases, and we began the work and we asked the questions that we will continue to ask through this journey. So our questions were to all of our staff, students, community members who work in the education center, who see themselves in the DDSB, who we are we, was what was most important about your school or work experience, what was working well, and how can we make it better, school or work experience, and what advice would you give to any new staff, student, family, or community member. So through that, we gathered our data, and that's how we got here in terms of our action.
Throughout all the engagement, we had over 4,000 people share with us their experiences and feedback. And we gathered that information and feedback not just through surveys, but also through thought exchanges, webinars, working groups, facilitated sessions, sketch notes, pop-ups, and emails. And with the pop-ups, we went to where people were, and we were seeking their involvement and feedback.
We also received feedback from our youngest learners, and we asked them the same questions, and we asked them what was best in their thing about their learning and what don't you like and what would you do better. And we had artists to sketch out what their data was and use that to come to our 3 pillars, which is our meaningful learning, our well-being, and our community connections. What we found was that our youngest learners told us the same things that our staff told us and our community members told us. And it was all connected to those 3 things. And it was also connected to our ministry priorities.
As we moved out of stage 1 into stage 2, we continued to build on that collaboration and engagement with the senior team to construct the operational plan. We continued to review the information, and we had a few guiding principles that we used as Lila Reed was our facilitator and guiding us through and facilitating our conversations and helping us with our thinking and development. And really, the guiding principle was to be clear. We want to be clear in what our work will be. We want to be clear in how it aligns with with our values and impact. And we want to be clear in what we are looking for to know if we're having that impact. And we want to be clear in how we're keeping ourselves accountable to the commitments that we have made. So as we conclude the operational plan development and we move into the launch, we also move into that 3rd stage as well in the new year with the school plans and department plans.
So the meat and potatoes of our plan is the really exciting part, and it's our question. What will we do? So if you look on the other side of your document, if you were to open it up, on the left-hand side of it is our guiding principles, and our guiding principles are founded in Indigenous rights, human rights, and knowing each other. So you'll see those as a foundation that goes through all of our actions. You will see in the red our actions around meaningful learning, and in the blue our actions around connected community and well-being. When you look at each of those chunks, you will see that we have some guiding indicators, and each of those numbers you will see action items. Now the exciting part about the action items is that this is, for example, in the first part, the second one says that we will create a professional development model that informs instruction and improves achievement, and so that all students will reach key DDSB milestones and on their unique pathways to individual success. What is exciting about that is that the teams are taking those action indicators, and that is what you will see in stage 3, when we actually, the principals and the schools, they turn those into school learning plan action items that will reach the desks of our students, because that's the foundation of why we do this work. If you look on the blue section around connected communities, and you see the numbered items, those are our action items that we will turn into those operational pieces that you will see, and well-being as that theme, and it all comes back to our priorities that we have heard from our community and from our staff that's important to them.
In the center section of the report, on the other side, on the left and the right, you'll see the little arrows, and those are highlighting what can this look like. So the impact that we want to have is not just in terms of differences in the outcome. We're also interested in the difference of the pathways that our students and families take, as well as the differences in the experiences our parents, students, and staff have. So in terms of experiences, you all know we can categorize, we can summarize and catalog. We do a great job at producing long tables and reports with lots of numbers. But we also recognize that numbers don't tell the whole story. So it's to that point that this plan's not just going to be interested in the quantity of experience, but the quality of the experiences. And what can this look like? We will continue to invite people, just as we did in the first stage, so it should be a very comfortable and familiar experience. To share their experiences. You'll be seeing and hearing those stories and narratives in our reporting on our programs, our professional development, our learning environments, and in our communications. And we're going to be talking about not just what is working, but what's not working and where we need to change.
And if you saw our student art gallery and our pop-up feedback station, you would see an example of how when we engage our community and our students, we also get an opportunity to ask them questions about what that will look like and how we are doing and what we need to do differently and what our next steps could be.
And how will we know? You will tell us. So we'll be engaging in that authentic engagement of students, staff, and parents in places and spaces you feel comfortable to gather in. It'll be at times that are convenient to you, just like our initial consultations, and it'll be through a variety of ways and an expanded selection of options, just like as was mentioned at the art gallery. How will we know that we're moving in the right direction? How will we know the work is making a difference, that we're having an impact? We'll know as we develop a cadence of accountability, which is a regular schedule that our senior team is going to be engaging in to review the feedback and the information that we get from the system, to gather and reflect whether the work we're having is having the success that we're planning for. And we'll be sharing it back with you, not as a single report at the end of the year, but throughout the year as the work is in progress. So each report that comes forward will be anchored in the MYSP priorities and will highlight the experiences our students, staff, and families are having.
So when we come together and when we work together and when we learn together, our director always reminds us how many days we have together with our students and with our staff and our staff who are working. And the multi-year strategic plan, this is our plan for the year 2024-2025. So, but we have 12,000 staff and we have 4 years to work through the plan, and this is the first step in the first year of the 4 years in terms of that. And our goal is always at the student desk. So our actions, what they look like and how students experience them, that is what our goal is. And we come back to our why and our who at the very top of the page. When we talked about who are we want everyone at DDSB to see themselves reflected in the work and the learning that we do and the opportunities and the experiences that we have. And we also want everyone at DDSB to know that we're looking for feedback in terms of what their experiences are like, how their learning is going, and what we can do in our next steps.
Thank you both for just walking us through those pieces, but I do want to just conclude our representation of what you have before you, trustees, by a resounding thank you to the senior team for the leadership, as well as our system leaders who have been very engaged and invested in getting us here today. What you see represented here has been hours of conversation by every single member of this team with their teams, and the number of wall notes and chart papers and sticky notes that have been used will keep somebody in great business. But I do want to extend my appreciation to the team for bringing this work forward, and finally the invisible team in behind putting some of this together in a representational way, the communications team for, again, the video as well as the work they continue to do with us, and particularly the work of the creative services team that can take ideas and make them visible so that people are able to understand them and have access to them. Our goal is that at the end of each year, this particular document will look dog-eared and marked up and somewhat dirty, if you will, with lots of pinholes in it, because the goal is not for prettiness but for usability. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back to yourself, Chair, for questions that trustees might have.
Any questions from trustees? Trustee Morton.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. This is completely awesome. And we talk a lot about communications and how important the way we communicate is to everybody in this business. You've communicated extremely well. I love this. I think I'm going to go home and put it up on my bulletin board. So thank you to all.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes, I appreciate how, we talked about using language that is understandable to everybody and so forth, and the action items that have presented are really are there and understandable, and I can see when we talk about who we are, I can see everybody in the who we are in all the actions that have been presented, which is what we want to see. And I just wanted to take a particular note around, because we were talking about this the other day, and as far as one of the action items around Indigenous education and creating basically an Indigenous consultation engagement framework with IAC to strengthen the relationship, because that was really key. So I can see the involvement of who we are in every part of, so great work, and thank you for the work you have done, Dr. Davis.
Trustee Morton?
Sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier, but that one screen with all the children's feedback, so many things jumped out at me, but that one comment was, "We love our math games," and I'm going, yes.
Seeing no further questions, thank you so much. Moving on to recommended actions, we have one this evening, and I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the draft minutes of the May 6, 2024 Standing Committee meeting. Trustee Cunningham and Trustee Arsenault, all those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to information items, and the first one is the student trustee report. Hang on. Trustee Hoare?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This May, O'Neill CVI organized a menstrual equity drive supported by the Student Senate to address the crucial issue of menstrual equity. The drive, held from May 13th to the 17th, had significant support from students, staff, as well as the community, successfully raising awareness about menstrual health and equity while providing essential hygiene products to the students within their school community. Additionally, the Senate organized a mental health conference, Creating Harmony, on May 7th, bringing together students from across the DDSB to engage in educational workshops, interact with community partners, and discuss the importance of mental health awareness. The conference received positive feedback, highlighting the significance of providing platforms for students to address and discuss critical issues affecting their well-being.
Thank you, Chair. As the year comes to a close, school year, senator elections in each secondary school across the board for the upcoming year have concluded. Our transition to a new cohort of student leaders within the board marks a significant milestone, and anticipation is high as newly elected senators prepare to run for positions on the executive team at our final Senate meeting this Thursday, June 6th. The incoming and outgoing student trustees also had the opportunity to attend OSTA's AGM, which was absolutely fabulous, offering opportunities for learning, networking, and bidding farewell to outgoing trustees embarking on new adventures. I was also able to provide a presentation to incoming student trustees outlining the lovely world of being a student trustee in the province of Ontario. To say I'm excited for everything that our student leaders will be able to achieve next year is an understatement. As you will know, this is my last report to the board, and if I may, I would like to reflect on my time sitting around this table. My journey to being here today began all the way back in June of 2021. I was told by the student trustee at the time, Alia Jalil, that I had been offered a spot on the Student Senate. From there, the next year, my student council teacher, Ms. Demaray, encouraged me to run for student trustee. So I wrote my speech over the winter break, and I was able to win my election. So I started here as student trustee in September of 2022. I was welcomed with open arms, and since then, this building has been my home away from home. I was able to meet and work with all of the fabulous people in this room, and I am so grateful for that. I have also been so proud and honored to be surrounded by the powerful, incredible women and Stephen at this table. It has been such a pleasure, and I hope that I've made my mark here. We certainly went through a lot these past years, and we've done so much. I was so lucky to be a part of reforming our student trustee election process, allowing all of our students across the board to vote, to making our school calendars more accommodating, and hopefully this month passing our first ever student trustee policy. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the incredible work of the educators supporting me every step of the way. Ms. Campbell, Ms. Nelson, Ms. Quartermain, and of course, Mr. and Mrs. Demaray. They are the reason I am here today. I am forever grateful for the time they have dedicated to allow me to succeed. It's been a roller coaster, but these have been the most fulfilling, incredible 2 years. I really couldn't imagine it being any other way. And I want to thank everyone, I'm gonna cry, who made it so excellent. I'm really gonna miss this.
Any questions on the report? No. Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you. No questions for me. Just want to say a huge thank you to our student trustees. Ben, we are going to miss you. Kayla, we're really happy to have you back for another year. But thank you so much for everything. You absolutely made your mark here.
Trustee Miller?
I just want to say to our student trustees, I am so proud of your leadership, the opportunities that you will have going forward, and the fact that no one ever has to ask you to take lead, you just go for it. I'm so proud of what you contribute to this board. I'm inspired, and I'm proud of you both, and I wish you all the success in your future endeavors.
Thank you, and I want to say, on top of the hard work, Ben, I certainly will miss your incredible personality, because showing up at board and seeing you there, and we're usually early, and it is always the highlight of the evening, to be honest. So I will miss you. Moving on to the next item, schools utilizing modified, I'm all choked up now, Ben. I'm sorry. Schools utilizing modified school year calendar. Over to Associate Director Jim Markowski.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Oldfield, the report begins on page 18 of your package this evening. In March, trustees had requested that staff bring a report forward to provide information on the modified school year calendar. In addition, staff have received questions and concerns that have been brought forward from the community regarding the impact of the modified school year calendar. In response, the report this evening is provided to the Board of Trustees, which includes information regarding schools utilizing a modified school year calendar. In the report, you'll notice there is a detailed history that has been outlined for your reference. I'm just going to very quickly highlight some of the key sections pertaining to the current schools under the modified school year calendar. C. Broughton Public School was proposed as a pilot school for a modified school year calendar for the school year 99-2000. Winchester Public School was approved to implement a modified school year calendar in August 2000. In secondary, Brock High School began a pilot in the 2005-2006 school year. In 2007-2008, Henry Street High School also initiated a pilot. In 2008, the board granted permission for Brock and Henry to utilize a modified school year calendar as a standard practice. And finally, in 2011, when Maxwell Heights opened, they were granted permission to adopt a modified school year calendar, which brings us to the 5 schools in total, 2 elementary, 3 secondary, that are utilizing a modified calendar. The report contains a summary of student achievement data, attendance data, and school climate data for the schools utilizing the modified school year calendar. There appears to be no correlation connection between the data with regard to the modified structure. Other related areas such as staffing challenges, financial implications, student summer and recreational opportunities are also outlined within the report. Elementary families elect to have their children attend schools with a modified school year calendar, and they do this through the registration process. Secondary families in Brock, Henry Street, and Maxwell catchments are not afforded the opportunity to select a calendar option. Because the initial establishment of a modified calendar for these schools was generated by a board motion will be required to adjust or remove the modified calendar structure for these schools. The path to this decision-making process begins with a motion for staff to conduct a review of the modified calendar structure and bring a report to inform the board's decision. As such, staff recommend initiating a review of the modified school year calendar at the 3 secondary schools for the upcoming 2024-2025 school year. The review will facilitate an opportunity to engage with families in these 3 school communities to determine their satisfaction with the modified school calendar and whether there is interest in continuing the structure into the 25-26 school year. In consideration of adhering to planning timelines, particularly for secondary school, the matter should be contemplated by the January 2025 board meeting. That is our report this evening. Happy to take any questions.
I'm going to go to Trustee Pinello online first.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So just my hand had been up earlier, and so before I make my comment on the modified year, I do want to just say to Student Trustee Cameron, I missed the boat, but I very much echo everything that my fellow trustees have said about you and your advocacy and your leadership. It has truly been a privilege to get to work with you, watch your advocacy, and you grow for the past 2 years, and so I'm very much looking forward to what you do next, and we'll be cheering you on the whole way. To switch gears to the modified year, thank you for bringing this report forward. As someone who did go to Maxwell Heights and did only ever experience a modified high school schedule, I can only ever speak for myself and my graduating class, who I'm sure would share with you how much of a difference it made in our lives, especially for our mental health when we had that November break. But understand that as times change and demands change, that experience may also change for students. So I'm very glad to see that feedback from the school communities themselves is going to be the focus of this next step, because I certainly wouldn't want to preclude, the opportunity to have a modified year simply because of scores, when sometimes the greatest impact cannot be quantified. And so for me, I can certainly attest to that wonderful qualitative experience, but I'm glad that that's where we'll be directing sort of the next steps for our feedback. Thank you.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, we just saw in the wonderful Ignite Learning Action Plan about all the different students that we have. What are we called? Who are we? And I wondered if the students at these schools are reflective of the larger population of the DDSB.
Would someone like to answer that?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Trustee Cunningham, just to ensure that I'm understanding your question when you're saying whether they're reflective of the larger population of the DDSB, is there specific key areas that you want us to elaborate on?
I know some school boards have identified that alternative education is primarily accessed by people who maybe have more money, or, two parents at home when who has more time, especially when they live far away from the school. I just wondered how easy this is to access and whether we feel that it's equally accessible and equally used by kind of everyone across the scale and not just attracting one particular population. Does that make more sense?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So in relation to the secondary schools, there's 3 of them in total, Brock, Henry Street, and Maxwell Heights. In terms of being reflective of the larger, broader population, what I can say is that the 3 schools are in 3 different municipalities. So from that perspective, it tends to cover a larger range. But really, there isn't, comparing, for example, experiences at Brock, Maxwell Heights, and Henry Street to other secondary schools, and basing on what impact the differing experiences would have as a result of the modified school calendar, it's really hard to give you data and kind of what I would say substantial evidence to support anything that I would bring forward. I think what would really answer your question is that when we bring kind of the input through the survey of the families and bring that forward in the fall or the early winter, you'll likely get a better reflection in terms of family and sort of input from the various community groups within those schools. In elementary, both schools are in the Whitby municipality. I don't want to sit here and talk about sort of a school profile in terms of how reflective they would be necessarily of the broader Durham region, but I can say that they are reflective of one of our municipalities and not necessarily have intersections with students attending other municipalities. Keep in mind, we do accommodate families who may want a modified school calendar structure in elementary by allowing them access to these schools. That all being said, if you look at the enrollment trends of these schools over time, it is decreasing. So that in itself is probably giving you an indication that it's not something that necessarily has been in demand over time, if that helps.
And I'm going to go to Director Williams-Taylor, I think has some additional comments.
Thank you, and thank you, AD Markovsky. Just another point, just to be perfectly clear, that the modified calendar at secondary school is not the equivalent of an alternative program. There is no reach out and access. If students live in the catchment area and that is their high school, that is the program. So this is not a selection experience for secondary school students.
Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the tremendous detail and information data that's provided in this report. And based on the recommendation that AD Markovsky has put forward, I'd like to submit a motion for trustee consideration. And not to be doing your job, Madam Chair, but I think the motion is up on the screen. So I move that staff initiate a review of the modified school year calendar at the 3 secondary schools, Brock High School, Maxwell Heights High School, and Henry Street High School. Input is required from the community, staff, students, and parents, and a report is to come back to trustees no later than January 2025.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Arsenault?
Thank you so much, Chair. I second the motion. This was, again, a lot of work that went into this, and I thank you for preparing it. I also thank you for the parents who have called and written and wanted some more information on this program. But I do think that this program has kind of run its course. The trustees, we could all talk about it a little bit more, but I do think that it's come to an end. Just say.
Trustee Martin?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm definitely going to support this motion. In fact, I feel rather strongly about it, and a year from now, I will probably be coming forward with a motion that we review the 2 elementary schools that are on the modified school plan. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to the next item. Item B, the 2024-2025 Inclusive Student Services Special Education Plan, and I will go to Superintendent Andrea McCauley.
Good evening, and through you, Chair. The draft 2024-2025 Inclusive Student Services Special Education Plan and the accompanying report can be found starting on page 28 in tonight's agenda. The plan is revised annually, which exceeds the current ministry requirement of a biannual review, and we undergo this work in transparency to community. The title of the plan, Inclusive Student Services Special Education Plan, reflects the specifically focused work of schools and the department in the provision of a wide range of programs and services which support student well-being, mental health, and learning accommodation while maintaining the searchability for those looking for the special education language. In the Durham District School Board, differentiation for individual students, whether through accommodation in regular class placements, through to specialized placement programs, through conditions supporting well-being to intensive supports for students who require individualized mental health support, striving to center each individual student in their individual excellence, interests, and programming needs is not in fact special or unique. It is the very service, or the very foundation of our student service. The Inclusive Student Services Special Education Plan aligns with all areas of the multi-year strategic plan: meaningful learning, connected communities, and well-being. Consultation with the Special Education Advisory Committee, between departments, and broader to other partners who support DDSB students, such as our provincial school colleagues, has informed the language revision reflected in this year's plan. Consultation on the plan is welcome throughout the school year. In addition, congruent to the draft budget currently before the Education Finance Committee, the plan reflects the proposed addition of 50 FTE or full-time equivalent permanent educational assistants. The plan also reflects the ongoing implementation of universal design for learning and de-streaming, and as such, we have made adjustments to the number of school support programs. The plan also reflects the opening of additional placement classes, specifically 1 elementary structured learning class program, 1 elementary developmental program class, and 3 practical learning program classes, 1 at the secondary level and 2 at the elementary level. Location shifts are also part of our annual review, and 4 classes are currently being relocated to position closer within the home areas of students who access, and we do so on a 3 to 5 year projection. The draft Inclusive Student Services Special Education Plan for the upcoming school year is shared with trustees this evening for information and feedback. The plan will be finalized following this meeting and will be before trustees with a recommendation for approval during the June board meeting. Thank you.
Any questions? I have Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think I'm specifically speaking about mainstream classes, Superintendent McCauley. And I would like to say that the early identification and intervention is critical for our students to be successful going forward. I did take a look at the chart on page 87, and I see that the number of Inclusive Student Services department staff has not increased, even though the number of students with special needs increases every year. Just wondering if you could speak to how we manage the demand for assessments and intervention services. It's kind of a two-part question. The second part is, would you be able to provide information as to the length of time or the wait time for students from the initiation of the consent for service to the actual assessment?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So taking that in a couple of components, So your first comment referenced around early intervention, and as a senior team, we would fully agree. And so that's where you see the heightening of the integration between teaching and learning and inclusive student services, because what we want to do is grow how we're meeting each individual student within their very classroom. So choice and voice in both learning and assessment. And so you'll hear more of that in the teaching and learning plan upcoming. And so what we're trying not to do is open the gaps in the first place for students by meeting their needs. And that's why the investment in classroom support staff was critical at this point in our district's pathway. So through COVID and over the past few years, we have had substantive increases to our regulated health professional teams. So specifically, over the last 4 or 5 years, our social work team has grown from 19 to 27. Psychological services has grown by a few, and our speech language team also grew by 3 last year. And so we had taken a look through a mental health and well-being lens, as well as you shared in your next question around the assessments. And so what happens when we're naming and noticing that program is not yet meeting students' needs? But our time in this moment in the district was to turn our attention to those that are beside teachers in the classroom and are critical to the daily experience of kids within their learning. And that's where you see that substantive increase of 5.6% growth to the educational assistant complement to the district. And so I think it's always that yes and of growing a strong system of both program foundations and then the services as we go from what all students should expect in their classroom to what some may need to what few then may need as well. And I fully concur. And our data shows that the vast majority of students with special education strengths and needs have their programming met very well within a regular class and mainstream, which we know keeps the greatest pathways open. In terms of your question around assessments, so all 3 regulated health teams are involved in assessments on a regular basis. So we usually will put assessments as synonymous with either psychological services or speech language. But our social workers are engaging in that ongoing dynamic assessment, which is how they come up with their plans with students and options as well. The teams are all 3 are in the midst of changing their service models as well to be more adaptive, be responsive, both from a cultural identity perspective, but also in terms of how we can grow and maintain our services. So that's where we see the introduction of group services, for instance, under mental health, where we can bring youth together and not necessarily do everything in a one-to-one way, where youth can actually lean on the strengths of each other. When we come to the typically standardized assessments, we are generally within a school year. We are generally under 3 or 4 months, where that information is needed in order to support programming decisions for a student. And then also within those assessment cycles, we're conscientious of assessments which are absolutely critical to pathways, such as the DSO assessment, that we know our students with developmental and intellectual disabilities need redone within their high school years in order to qualify for services post-secondary. So there's lots of layers to the question, because sometimes we need a standardized assessment to further understand the student's programming needs, and sometimes we don't. We need really good, authentic consultation with the student, their family, and their educators. So the answer is somewhere in the middle of the yes and, but where it is deemed necessary and needed, we are usually around 3 months to within the school year. This year we do have a few speech language assessments that are a bit longer than that, and we're using the opportunity of the summer funding in order to catch up that list so that we have that information for planning for the 24-25 school year.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, most of the questions I have written down there were just asked and answered. The one thing I did want to mention that I've been hearing from parents is when it comes to virtual education, and specifically how children who have exceptional needs are unable to access the same type of support in the virtual environment that they do in bricks and mortar. While We, of course, believe that the in-person school experience is a wonderful one. It's not necessarily the best fit for all students and all families, and lots of people are finding that they really love the virtual program, or loved it in the past and are no longer able to have their students there due to the lack of EAs. So I'd love it if that was something that could be considered moving forward. Yeah.
So through you, Chair. Thank you for that feedback, because I think how students and families experience the school system is really important for us to hear. We resource DDSB at home in the same way we resource our in-person schools in terms of the special education resource teachers as well as the educational assistants. Where there is a differentiation between the current school year and the next school year is that we have tiered the special education classes out of DDSB at home. So through, again, the height of the pandemic, we offered a variety of placement options through the virtual school. We have slowly tiered those out, responsive actually to family inquiry. So the first thing was gifted, similar to French immersion coming. Our final couple classes move out of the school for this June and return to an in-person format. When we look at the students' programming outcomes, I would position a bit different that we are not able to meet the totality of the outcomes of the programs through a virtual format. The practical learning program is exactly that, practical learning in terms of literacy, numeracy, and life skills. A significant amount of that is work education, and a significant amount of that is hand over hand guidance around self-care, cooking, and those are very challenging topics to do virtually and are best placed within the community of our classrooms, and therefore those classes have moved back into person. And the teams have been working across DDSB at home and in person on the individual transition plans for each student, appreciating that for some of the students, it has been quite a length of time since they have entered a physical school building.
Trustee Miller?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm particularly interested in, on page 188, looking at the section in Messaging Matters. I'm just wondering about where it says if a student is not being offered placement at the time, focus should be placed on maximizing the current placement and continuing to implement individualized programming. My question is around, are there any changes or any updates to how those students that may not have a placement at the time be assessed so that they can continue in that progressive learning?
Thank you. And so placement can come in a number of ways and at a number of points of consideration. And sometimes where we're asked to consider a placement for a student, the data does support that their needs can be met in a regular class placement. And sometimes the class numbers are a bit scary for families in terms of mainstream versus that smaller connected community of a classroom. But that's where it's really important that we do place emphasis on individualizing the program. Sometimes the team is recommending placement, family is seeking placement, but it's a not yet because the community within the classroom matters. So for instance, we're involved in a current exploration of strategies where the class is actually sitting primarily grade 4 to 6, and a young student is in early primary and would be the sole student at that grade level. So then what we do is we look at it long term, but in the meantime, what are we doing to support the student? Because our requirements are around accommodation, not necessarily accommodation in a specific placement. So that's where the team wraps around to really individualize the planning.
Trustee Linton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just looking at page 87, and not to be pedantic, but I'm looking at the senior speech language pathologist and the speech language pathologist, noting that in the 2024-2025 school year, we're adding the senior speech language pathologist. Just wondered if you could talk to the rationale, and because I guess that comes with a wage increase, so just the rationale, both, why that position and why you feel it will be needed and the role they'd play. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So within some of our teams, so I'll preface it by saying the province of Ontario is still experiencing a shortage in healthcare. Our teams that provide speech, social work, and psych services are all regulated health professionals governed under their colleges. In the last few years, similar to a few other departments, there is lots of options professionally for those that carry these qualifications. We also look at succession planning within the district, and so when we look at a team structure that has a senior manager and clinical lead for a very broad team, broad in terms of numbers that you see on the chart, it is important that the professionals in those roles have clinical guidance and clinical supervision. That's a requirement of us as a regulated health professional employer. It's a requirement of their colleges. We also know that we have many talented, skilled, greatly experienced staff within those teams who down the road may be seeking leadership positions. And so from a structure perspective, to have one leader who usually stays in the position quite a long time, and then a flat hierarchy within the team, what we were sending is a message that our team members needed to go elsewhere to gain formal leadership experience. So what we've embedded, similar to our facilitator secondment, is a role that is a senior position focused mainly on the clinical direct service consultation around students. The senior manager carries those operational management issues and brings somebody in on a 3-year leadership stipend. And so this current school year is year of 2 of 3 for our social work team. We are introducing the same in speech for September, which will be a 3-year leadership secondment. The stipend is nominal and comparative to the stipend for a classroom teacher comparative to a facilitator's position at $3,800 a year.
Seeing no further questions, we're going to move on to item C, which is the 2023-2024 Teaching and Learning Plan Update. And I have a long list of superintendents under this. So, and who would be, it's going to be Aaron, Superintendent no, it's not. We're Aaron. Okay.
We got it.
Go ahead.
Just going to slide this over it. Right. Good evening, and through you, Chair Oldfield. Tonight's report can be found on pages 197 to 260 in your package. Superintendent Hamid and I are honored to share with you an update on the implementation of the 2023 to 2024 DDSB Teaching and Learning Plan, which is included in your package as Appendix B. This plan integrates our literacy and numeracy initiatives into a cohesive strategy designed to ensure every student thrives academically in an environment that is safe, inclusive, and engaging. In February 2022, the Ontario Rights Commission released the Right to Read report, highlighting literacy as a foundational human right. This report has significantly influenced literacy instruction across Ontario, including here in the Durham District School Board. Following this and the updated 2023 Language and Grade 9 English curriculum and the Policy Memorandum 168, focusing on the inclusion of 30 minutes of literacy daily in grades 1 to 3, these have guided our efforts to enhance literacy instruction and learning.
In addition to our literacy initiatives, we have developed the DDSB Math Achievement Action Plan, which we've brought to the board twice so far this year. The purpose is, of course, to improve math education through evidence-based strategies and collaborative partnerships. These initiatives are part of our holistic approach to improving both literacy and numeracy across the district. As we share this report, we want to highlight not just the data, but also the voices and experiences of students, which provide a vivid illustration of the impact of these initiatives. For example, integrating Indigenous knowledge systems and histories into the curriculum includes lessons on the significance of treaties, residential schools, and Indigenous contributions to society. This approach honors Indigenous and inherent rights of students. The hope is to provide a clear picture of the progress and impact on student learning and outcomes. Our Teaching and Learning Action Plan for the 23-24 school year centers on 3 key focus areas: humanizing the learning environment, which is creating inclusive educational settings that reflect diverse student identities, including Indigenous perspectives. Human-centered professional learning, providing ongoing professional development for educators to understand and implement inclusive teaching practices, which helps educators to create supportive and understanding classroom environments for all students. And thriving pedagogical practice, implementing teaching methods that are inclusive and equitable, ensuring the curriculum and resources are up to date and free from stereotypes. This supports all students in reaching their full potential. These focus areas are designed to enhance learning environments and teaching practices, ensuring literacy and numeracy are fundamental rights that enable students to succeed.
Mo had previously shared the integration of Indigenous knowledge systems and ways of knowing and being in our learning. This slide highlights the integration of exactly this. Students are engaged in a read aloud with the book Fry Bread by Indigenous author Kevin Noble Millard. Students were examining new words within the read aloud while listening to the book, and they used these new words to make connections to their own lives. Their connections included the new vocabulary, and they shared their thinking through loose parts. Again, this demonstrates how Indigenous content and knowledge systems are embedded seamlessly, and Indigenous students see themselves reflected in their learning, gaining pride and confidence. As we continue to focus on humanizing the learning environment, we take time to get to know students, their identities, their gifts, and their strengths. This is brought alongside the intentional use of screener and assessment data to develop a deep understanding of each and every learner. This helps inform learning opportunities that are relevant and responsive to each student. As you can see here, educators are examining and analyzing literacy screener data and math data to inform next steps in instruction. This data allows educators to identify specific areas where students excel or may need additional support, enabling educators to design responsive whole class instruction and targeted interventions for students in small groups or individually. These personalized approaches do not only enhance academic achievement, but also boost student engagement and confidence.
In mathematics, we have initiated targeted professional development opportunities that focus on collaborative analysis techniques for examining student learning data. This allows educators to make timely adjustments to instructional strategies. We have provided training on the Education Perfect digital math tool and integrated the Math Up classroom platform into daily teaching methods. This approach has enhanced our math learning environments through a balance of instructional methodologies.
And now for the best part, the students. The impact of utilizing assessment data and rich professional learning to inform instruction has been profound. We have seen significant improvements in both student achievement and engagement. Students benefit from personalized learning experiences that are tailored to their specific needs, which not only help them master essential skills, but also foster a deeper connection to their educational journey. Within this video, we'll highlight a sample whole class phonics routine.
Go. You know how to do that one. Go. How do we spell two? School's gonna be a bit tricky. What sound do you hear at the beginning?
Awesome, thank you. Next, Karis will show the learning that comes from these regular phonics routines, demonstrating engagement and confidence and strong foundational literacy skills.
Can you tell me about the E rule?
Super E can only jump over one consonant. If it was two, it couldn't jump over.
And what does the super E do to the O?
It makes it say his name.
What does it sound like in that word?
Go. Magic E can only work on A, E, I, O, and U.
Teachers are also better equipped to identify gaps in understanding and provide targeted support, ensuring all students experience improvement and growth. Lexia is an individualized program that has resulted in a more dynamic and responsive classroom environment where students feel valued and supported. Additionally, the data-driven insights allow for continuous monitoring and adjustments for instructional strategies, leading to sustained academic growth. Besides Lexia, students also receive targeted small group instruction.
So this is Lexia, and it helps us with our reading skills, and right away it knows what level you're on, and it will program that, and it'll help you whatever you're stuck on, and stuff like that.
In math, we have seen a 36% increase in enjoyment among grade 3 students and a 37% increase among grade 6 students. Looking ahead to the 2024-2025 school year, we will continue to enhance our initiatives, expand professional learning opportunities, and reinforce our commitment to creating learning communities where every student can achieve. In this slide, we see 2 students actively engaged in the high-impact practice of math conversations. This approach fosters deep mathematical understanding by encouraging students to articulate their thinking, reason through problems collaboratively, and develop critical communication skills. By participating in these structured math dialogues, students not only enhance their conceptual knowledge, but also build confidence in their ability to solve complex problems. This practice is a key component of our Math Achievement Action Plan aimed at creating dynamic and interactive learning environments that support all students' math growth.
This is one whole, and a whole means I have the whole cookie to myself, so I can eat it. But then Amber comes up and she says, I'm hungry. Okay, so then I'm going to split it in half, then I'll be left with this. And that makes 1/2. But they're 2 equals, so it's going to be fair that we both get 1 equal half. And 1 equal half means we can both have the same amount. Because
Looking ahead to the 2024-2025 school year, we will continue to enhance our initiatives, expand professional learning opportunities, and reinforce our commitment to creating learning communities where every student can thrive. Key actions will include ongoing professional development, expansion of structured literacy training, the implementation of the mandatory universal screener Acadience, and responsive programming.
The 23-24 Teaching and Learning Action Plan has established a strong framework for enhancing the learning environment and promoting effective educator practices throughout the DDSB. We are excited about the progress we have made and are committed to continuing our efforts to ensure every student has the opportunity to reach their full potential. Thank you.
And I'll go to Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank you for this comprehensive report, and especially for the glossary of acronyms. I do recognize that we're still primarily at the implementation stage with this, but I just wanted to speak to the fact that not too long ago, Whitby trustees had an opportunity to visit schools. There were elementary schools in the Brooklyn area, and we saw this program at work, from the full-day kindergarten students up to the intermediate students. We witnessed students engaged and confident, no doubt about that. There was positive feedback and excitement from staff, which I think definitely goes to culture. And so what I'm looking forward to as we continue with the implementation part of this, I'm looking forward to receiving information with regards to the student achievement data and the gathering evidence of learning to give us a really clear picture of how well this program is working in our schools, and I'm confident that it is. Also, interpretation of the evidence, I think, would be really helpful. So I'm looking ahead to that. Once again, thank you for a very comprehensive report tonight.
Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I think this is a wonderful report. I love how aligned it is with our strategic plan. I can see how all our pillars come to life there: Indigenous rights, human rights, and particularly knowing each other. I was really encouraged by the humanization of the program. As someone who is weak in math and struggles with math, the ideas that you put forward today, I feel, would make it a lot less intimidating to someone like me who struggles, and perhaps to someone who struggles with literacy or any area that they feel uncomfortable with. I feel that this makes it much more approachable and less scary. So I really appreciated that. To Trustee Thatcher's point about data, you did have some numbers in there about increasing the enjoyment of math, something that would be wonderful to someone like me to actually sit in a classroom and enjoy it. So 37%, I think you said, increase, that's outstanding. So this sounds like, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out over time as well, but this seems like it's an excellent plan and already making some really positive changes. So thank you for sharing that.
Trustee Edwards?
Thank you, and I agree, concur with some of the comments that the other trustees have said about this plan. And I'm particularly interested, again, when it comes to for next year, as far as implementing from the secondary panel, especially when we talk about social emotional learning and mathematical identity, as far as ensuring that we are able to apply those strategies to the students so that they can achieve their financial, particularly when we talk about financial literacy. There is the ability, but they, due to their individual challenges at the high school level, they might be not at the same level as other students of their peers, and they need to have access to some of the strategies that are available at the elementary level and that are perfectly outlined here, and how they're implemented in the secondary school panel, so that we ensure that we have just as much success or greater success. That 37% is amazing to have people enjoy math, that we'd like to see some of the same things at the secondary level for our students that are have learning challenges at that particular grade level.
Trustee Linton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and echoing the thoughts of the other trustees, just in terms of the graphics and how easy it is to follow and understand, so thank you for that. I just want to kind of hone in on the no student left behind notion, and just wondered if you can speak a bit about how you're going to be analyzing the data, like is it going to be through quizzes or through assessments? Because I'm wondering if we're looking at the grades, or are we looking at the demographics within those grades? And again, that's speaking to a newcomer population. Trustees spoke about different learning styles. So ensuring that, although as a grade they may be doing well, are there demographics within that grade that may be struggling? And how you're looking at assessing whether that's a challenge or something that's successful. Well, thank you.
Thank you, and through your chair, I can maybe speak to that quickly. There is slide number 2, if we have access to it, which may or may not. However, on slide number 2, what we could see was educators working on computers. And these were, there we are. Well, they're working on computers there. You can somewhat see the yellow and the red and the green. And so each individual, these are literacy screeners around phonological awareness. Each skill is the student's name would be across the top. The skill is along the side. And so understanding, first of all, who our kids are, knowing who our students are, knowing what their gifts are, their talents are, their lived experiences are. We then also take this academic data, and we can see students who have green have mastered that skill. Students who might be in red need more practice. And so that really helps to form where I start with my whole class lesson, is where all students are green, and we're going to build success. Where we see some students having red indicators, that tells us they're going to need a little bit more small or individualized instruction based on those specific skills. And of course, as we get into those lessons, we then build the lessons based on what we know about the students. So some students might use tools like Lexia that we saw to really meet where they are. And for other students, they need that one-on-one, they need that small group instruction with the educator, or a balance of both, and then that's provided to them as well. So that is one way in which we determine the needs of students and how we're going to ensure each student gets what they need.
In terms of math, Trustee, and through you, Chair, Trustee Linton, if you'll recall in our February presentation, you'll hear me speak a lot, and you'll hear the team speak a lot about the notion of collaborative analysis. And in that presentation, it's essentially the same process that Superintendent Elmhurst talked about, specifically looking at the math indicators and doing the same process in terms of trying to match the perfect balance of high-impact instructional practices so that we're humanizing the environment for every student, essentially.
Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you for an amazing presentation. Very impressive. I really like to see the increase in the level of engagement, enjoyment in math activities. So when you talk about primary grades, grade 3, it was an increase of 6%. Junior grades were up to 37%. I would be interested in learning about intermediate grades and secondary. And I hope that we can see an increase in those grade levels as well. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much. And moving on to item D, which is a quarterly construction and major projects progress report. And I will turn it over to Associate Director David Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, it's my pleasure to welcome Lisa Bianco, who's here to present the report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm pleased to share with you an update on construction and development activities since our last report in March. DDSB was fortunate to receive 3 capital priorities allocations in response to our capital priorities submission in October 2023. Each of the 3 new elementary schools will accommodate 634 pupil places, and one will also include a 49-space childcare. 2 projects are located in the West Whitby area and one in North Oshawa. Currently, geotechnical investigations are already underway, and design work and municipal approvals is in process. We look forward to welcoming families to these buildings in 2026. Facility Services continues to see good progress on the construction of our existing capital priorities projects. Construction of the Beaver River Public School project and the unnamed North Oshawa Public School continue to reach their milestones and are proceeding on schedule for a September 2024 opening. Good progress has also been made on the Mary Street Community School site for the replacement addition and site work, and the project occupancy remains targeted for September. Approval to proceed to tender was received from the ministry, and tenders for the unnamed North Oshawa Secondary School and the unnamed Coghlan Public School were released in May. Results will be received in the next 2 weeks. Unnamed Pickering Seton Public School is well along in municipal approvals. ATP has been submitted to the ministry, and we expect tender results a little bit later in June. As well, childcare projects at Vaughan Willard Public School and Scott Central are wrapping up, and Seneca Trail is well underway with construction proceeding at a great pace. Preparation for the start of the summer portion of the 2023-2024 renovation improvement projects is underway. Most tenders are completed, and we're making preparations to get into the schools and get going. Our staff continue to develop projects that utilize our funding to achieve the greatest impact and further DDSB's strategic goals and key priorities. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
First up, I have Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I would just like to add to what has just been said, that I'm very, very pleased to have received the funding for 3 new capital priorities projects. I'm sure that this was supported by a solid business plan, so appreciate that. And the only other thing I wanted to comment on is the progress chart that is part of the reports now. I just find those are working really well for me, because it's kind of an at a glance what's the word? It just tells me exactly where we are. So at a glance. So I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just needed some clarification of what does project is under investigation mean?
Thank you. Generally, under investigation would mean that we are doing, investigations or seeking information on perhaps, geotechnical site conditions, what the makeup of the ground is, so that we can design structure. So that type of gathering information, I think, is probably a better term.
And I'm going to go to Trustee Cunningham. Sorry, Trustee Cunningham, I turned off your mic the first time, so I'm going to you.
No worries. Through you, Chair. I'm glad I noticed that it was turned off. I wanted to ask about the Cochran School. As we know, it was originally slated to be in Seton Pickering and was moved to Ajax due to timing. And I do see there's been a reschedule to September of 2025, which is not shocking to me since here we are in June. But I wondered if you could speak a bit to whether we're confident in that date. Are we really set to get these kids to a school that's closer to them? Because we know they're being bused all over the place.
Thank you. We are currently out for tender for the project, so assuming a favorable tender that's within budget, we would be looking to begin construction within the next few weeks, so once tender is received. So I do qualify that with, again, within budget. If we aren't within budget, we would have to seek additional funds for from the ministry, but we are quite confident in the numbers that we have and that we have been approved for.
Trustee Edwards.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the hard work that is being put into these budget process, ensuring that we get our approvals and all the work that the facilities does, as well as ensuring they're maintaining our schools and getting the work done prior to the start of the school year when it comes to some of the upgrades and updates. This might seem like a silly question, but it just came from experience from last summer, is that do we actually put any kind of notice when it comes to things like roofing projects out to the community to say that a roofing project is starting, so that because needless to say, you usually get calls and saying they're making noise at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they are allowed to at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I'm just wondering if we actually notify, the community, sort of, even up to the parents. I know it's summertime, but saying, hey, roofing is starting, sort of thing, just so that people are aware of that it's a valid project and it's happening.
Thank you, and yeah, we do get a lot of feedback from communities, particularly when we are roofing or when our contractors forget that the time to start construction is 7 a.m., not 6 a.m. But having said that, we tend to communicate. We communicate with our schools and through our school families. We don't do a sort of a general sort of announcement to the public. Just simply, it's sort of a challenging vehicle to do that. We are hopeful that by communicating with the school and the families through conversations with friends and neighbors, that it does sort of get out to the broader community. But we do receive a lot of feedback through the DDSB website and communication, from from friends and neighbors that way as well, and we always endeavor to respond to those as quickly as we can. And signage also. Thank you, Associate Director Wright. We also do post signage on site, as the ministry asks us to do. So there's a visual representation that there is a project going on. Doesn't say what type, but it is to let people know that there's work happening.
And seeing no further questions, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned.